Welcome to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. My guest today is Oscar Dennis, and he has one of the most scary, unique, and quite simply inspiring stories in all of sports. Oscar qualified for the Olympics in Tokyo 2020 with the Kenyan Rugby Sevens team before suffering a horrific hit and run accident, which nearly led to his leg being amputated, and that he was lucky to survive. In a remarkable show of resilience, he made it to Paris Olympics in 2020 in the para tandem road cycling and is now training for LA 2028 for para triathlon. Oscar, welcome to Abnormal.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Let's get to it.
I mean, if you don't fit the definition of abnormal, I do not know who does, to be very honest with you.
Oh, it's been quite the journey. And I guess we'll dive into that through this podcast. But yeah, crikey, got a fair bit to share on that. So.
Lots to share, man. And it's been so Oscar and I actually used to know each other from quite a young age. We didn't go to school together. We went to rival schools in Bath in the UK, where I grew up. And we played at our local rugby team, which was Bath as well, in the centres together, actually, 12 and 13 or 10 and 13 sometimes. But it's been a long time, man. It's been a long time.
Yeah, super, super long. I mean, it's crazy to think how long ago we left school. So
ages catching up. There's a lot to dive into your story because not when I last spoke to you, but when sort of my fondest memories of you were when we were in Bath together, doing private training together, because I had aspirations of going professional. I knew you had aspirations of going professional as well for back in Kenya, and which went really well. Like you were, part of the Kenyan rugby program for a good amount of time. Was it 8 years or so? You were in the proper Kenyan.
Yeah, it's in the setup for, it was around 8 years. Kind of was in and out a little bit. I went to uni for 2 years, kind of in the middle of that as well, but we're still part of the program. But yeah, it was about an 8-year stint in total.
And I'm going to start with the most basic question, especially for our visual watchers out there on Spotify and YouTube. If you see Oscar's face and you talk about him playing for Kenya and you see some of his content that he's putting out there on Instagram, he's not your typical Kenyan bloke. So can you just explain to the listeners and the watchers what your ties are to Kenya?
So my grandfather moved out to Kenya with the army, the British Army. He kind of went out on a bit of an anti-poaching program, stuck out there, met my granny out there. My mum was then born there, went to primary school there, then secondary school in the UK, then moved back to Kenya. And my dad is a Essex lad who then moved out. He came out to manage the livestock for the Out of Africa film, and they met then, and that's how that all came about. Then me and my sister were born there. So I guess we're third generation Kenyan. Winter babies, we come out white at that time of year. But that's it, kind of in the long and short, really, how we've ended up in Kenya.
But it's always been somewhere you've gone back to when you were growing up, right? Like when you were in school in the UK, you'd go back there on holidays?
Yeah. So Kenya's been home. So I was born in Kenya, and I go back there the whole time. The whole family's living out there. So it is, it's very much home. So even when I went to school in the UK, every holiday we'd go back home. When I went to university in Australia in the holidays, I'll then head back home as well. So it's very much home.
And what age were you when you got your first introduction into the Kenyan rugby program?
It was when I just came out of school. So it was Mike Friday's kind of last little stint there. So it must have been the end of 2013. I got my first.
So you would have been around 18 years old, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I don't know if you remember, I missed my last school year of sport with that groin injury. I then went down to South Africa, had a 15-minute surgery. I had Gilmore's groin, basically. 15-minute surgery, was back kind of running around in 6 weeks. So I then went to Australia for 6 months just to play out there. And then after that, it must have been kind of July 2014 that I was playing for the local circuit, my local club, and then got the call up but I pulled through into the sevens again. So yeah, it's kind of mainly from, I guess, yes, July, well, maybe September 2014 that I kind of was into Kenya sevens properly.
And what was the Kenyan program look like? Like, I know there's the 15s program, sevens program, as well as other countries as well. But you're obviously from there. You've grown up there. Did you know a lot about the program before starting it? Did you know a lot of the guys, or were you really like fresh faced, thrown in at the deep end?
No, I was pretty fresh and thrown in at the deep end. And it was at a time all the kind of the big boys were around, like your Collins and Giras, your Humphrey Kayangas, your William Backers, your Dennis Ombachis, your Biko Demis, so all of that. But I got to know them pretty quick. Me and Biko actually played for the same club side, so got on very well with him. Then Dennis Ombachi came across to our club side as well. And the boys just took me under their wing, kind of and in the stride. And yeah, it was awesome. It was such a fun journey and kind of a bit out of my comfort zone as well. But it was awesome. I wouldn't change it for the world. So yeah, thrown in the deep end.
Some of the videos and photos and stuff that I'd see on your social media, but not just your social media, like some of the Kenyan rugby team social media, and I followed a few of those guys as well. And when I see your face popping up on their Instagram feeds, I know I shouldn't, but it makes me laugh. Not because you don't deserve to be there, but you very much deserve to be there. But it's just, there's something about seeing your very white face amongst the middle of the Kenyan rugby team. It's just hilarious.
It's a big contrast, the two colours, isn't it, really? So you do stand out like a sore thumb. But yeah, I mean, I got so many nicknames from it, and it was cool. Yeah, such a cool journey looking back at it now. And like, yeah, as I said, I wouldn't change it for the world. And I got so much out of it and became really good mates with the boys. And yeah, we just had a blast for 8 years, really. And then...
Are you still close with those guys?
Yeah. So definitely see them kind of when I go home and stuff. A lot of them, having finished their rugby now, have gone down the golfing route. So we try to get a few rounds in when I go home and catch up. Dennis Ombachi's obviously gone down his cooking route, but he also plays a bit of golf or tries to. So also catch up with him. No, it's cool. Yeah, it's a family that you'll kind of have forever, which is what I love about sport as well. I guess you go through so much with each other on the training pitch, on tour, that you do become super tight, and it is a brotherhood. So yeah, you definitely stay kind of connected.
For sure. And I want to sort of ask a question about your rugby friends as well in Kenya. What was their kind of reaction to you when you had your bike accident?
It was crazy, actually. Like the whole rugby family, from your supporters to your management to the players. I mean, I just had so much support come in from all of them, and everyone was asking what they could do, if they could do anything. Like it really was a family, and I guess it's super cool to see, like especially from the fan side as well and the management side, because those are two that you're not really associated with too much. And so for them to all pull through as well, just it was super nice. It was super kind of, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird way to put it in terms of like it's nice to know that you actually kind of had an effect on their kind of time with the rugby as well, that they then now want to help you out as well. So it was really kind of cool to see.
I mean, that's nice. It's good to hear that you had that reception from people, obviously in horrific circumstances. And I do want to talk about that because that's part of what makes your story so inspiring and special and unique. And we'll get into the Olympic stuff a bit later. But for the listeners out there, a bit of context. You were training to get a place in the Kenyan sevens team in the 2020 Olympic Games. And before you managed to sort of go to those Olympic Games, you had your horrific bike accident. So do you mind just telling us from your experience? I'm sure you're sick of recounting what happened, but I think it's important context for this episode.
No, 100%. So it was actually quite funny. So it was that whole weird time when COVID happened, and they somehow managed to set up a World 10 series in Bermuda. And so Frankie Horn contacted me saying, would you and 4 of the other Kenyan boys want to come out and play for SX10? We're kind of taking a sevens-based side out there. And I said, look, 100%. So that was in kind of mid-October of 2020. And we ended up winning that tournament, which was unbelievable. And it was the first time I wasn't injured, played all right, had a really good time and tournament, and then got home on the Tuesday morning. And yeah, just long story short, basically jumped on my motorbike and to go have dinner with a friend and his mum. And then on the way home, I just got cleaned up. I went to turn right and a car was overtaking and they T-boned me from the side. So yeah, it was kind of going from a super, super high to a huge low, and my life changed in that moment. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to delve into the
Yeah, well, mate, I mean, I've obviously seen a lot about it from following your journey, being a friend of yours, knowing you from a young age, and I mean, I think it's important to explain, like you were, well, first of all, you're lucky to be alive. You're obviously wearing a helmet, and you cracked your head. You got thrown from the bike, but the leg, man, the leg. Like, yeah, I can't believe you're still able to do what you do. Like, and you're a Paralympian. You're running. I see you're doing all this triathlon training, and I've seen the footage and the images of your leg. And how many operations did you have to have in the end? Was it 12 or something like that?
Yeah, I had 12. So I had 7 in the first 5 weeks, which was the key stage of it. So obviously got hit by the car. Then actually, it was a friend of mine who was on her way home from a dinner party. She found me there as well. So poor girl had to deal with it all. But she was super strong. I called my mate as well and said, look, I've broken my leg. We're going to Karen Hospital, which was just around the corner. Can you meet us there? And he said, yeah, 100%. So she actually took me to hospital. And it was kind of at that point that I realized how bad it was. I went, so basically, let's go back to, so I got hit and I knew, so I was knocked unconscious, kind of woke up winded on the floor, turned around to kind of have a look if anyone was there, hit and run, they're gone. Just my motorbike was down the road and it was on a really dark patch of road as well. And so I was like, right, well, I need to get off the road. Otherwise a car's going to see me last minute, probably run me over as well. So I was like, right, check, head's kind of all right. My helmet and everything was all cracked up the back, but I was kind of okay. Went down my body, knew my leg had taken the blow. And it was only at the point where I looked down and I saw there was a huge kind of, I guess it popped out the back from the force of everything, which is pretty grim. And I went to have a better look at that. And as I lifted up my leg, it was just hanging there because I've snapped my shin bones. So it was hanging and I thought, oh, crikey, here we go. So I basically crawled off the road backwards with my leg in the air. I then took out my phone, took my helmet off, took out my phone, called my mate. He came down and met me at the hospital. And so they did the first surgery in Kenya that night. And then after that, I had to be medevaced down to Cape Town. The leg was in a pretty bad place that they didn't have the, it's called an external fixator, which is that kind of cage they stick around the outside of it. And they couldn't put that on in Kenya. And he said the only way to kind of save your leg right now is to get down to South Africa and get that on. So I was then medevaced down to Cape Town. Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd get my own little private jet down there, but I didn't think it would be in that kind of way. But it was, I medevaced down. And then, I was in hospital for 6 weeks leading up to Christmas and had 7 surgeries in the first 5 weeks, which was rather hectic.
And what's going through your mind? What's going through your mind in moments like that? You've you've just been hit, the fucker's driven off. Yeah. Are you thinking about that at all?
No. I think at that point I was thinking, literally my leg's going to fall off. It's just being held on by a bit of skin on the front of my shin. And so I was thinking, I could literally just, if I yanked on this leg, it would just come off.
So that's the only thing connecting it. That's the only thing connecting your leg from staying on.
Yeah. Like all the back was all kind of blown open, and then on the front was just there was a bit of skin around the front that was kind of holding because the two
Oh
bones
my God.
in the rib were snapped. Um, and I remember my sister showing the surgeon in South Africa the photo, and he said, honestly, if I'd seen that, I would have said you're 100% going in for amputation. I mean, I was due for amputation twice, and they luckily were like, look, first of all, we don't know how your flesh is alive in your leg, having kind of taken 3 days to get down to South Africa. So you kind of first surgery, they were like, yeah, look, you're in a better place than you were, but you're still kind of 50-50 for the next surgery for amputation. So managed to get through that as well.
So
But I don't know.
they're telling you that your leg might be amputated before you going into these surgeries.
So the first one, I was so drugged up. The first one I can't really
Yeah.
remember. And then I was talking to my sister about it afterwards, and we kind of went through it again. And I was like, yeah, okay. Because the first surgery, so they basically put me on the Medivac down, filled me up with fentanyl just to get me down there. So yeah, it was as high as a kite in the airplane, and then got to Cape Town, and they put me in the ambulance, drove me to Vincent Pallotti Hospital, where they then tried to take the cast off my leg. But I was like, look, it's pretty damn sore, and you guys got to pull quite hard because it swelled up due to like the flight. So the doctor came in and she was like, look, we're going to sedate you with ketamine just to take it off. And I was like, crikey, all right. So already now
Jeez.
high on fentanyl, and they filled me up with ketamine, and I had the craziest
Oh
trip.
my God.
It was wild in A&E, in the
It's
whole
not all
room.
bad. It's not all bad.
No. Yeah, you got to experiment with a few things in control. So the whole room fucking filled up like spaghetti with my arms and my legs. And it was weird because I was with it. And I was like looking around thinking, what is going on? And then suddenly like my hands and my feet shot to the top right corner of the room. And I went into like a dream state. And now I was back at Cape Town Airport, and it was just my hands, so like cut off at my wrists and just my feet. And I was watching the four things like go-karts jumping around and racing each other around Cape Town Airport, like over Play-Doh jumps, and then and then I came back into it in the room, and I was like, "What is going on?" And by that point, like
What's
the
just
cast was
happened?
off and everything, and yeah. And then it was about 4 hours after that I went into surgery. So yeah, the first few days were I can't even remember them. I was so filled with drugs and
Oh
everything.
my God, man. It must have, I mean, I'm thinking it's obviously horrible for you, but your family and your friends must have been so
Yeah,
stressed.
I think for them it's worse. I guess for me, I was kind of in it and I was, yeah, kind of out of it as well. So, and I think once you're in a situation like that, it's a lot easier for you to deal with rather than like, yeah, your family and all that kind of stuff. So my sister actually flew down with me in the Medivac, booked me into hospital, all of that. So she dealt with most of it, and yeah, so grateful to her. And I don't know how she did it, to be honest, but maybe she thought she was going to get a nice trip down in a private jet. Anyway, she was at the end
Yeah.
of my thinking leg in a tiny little plane.
Oh man, it's honestly one of the most insane stories I've ever heard. And I
Crazy,
can't believe
really.
it's happened to you, having known you like from when we were sort of 14, 15 years old. It's
Wow.
crazy. And something like that, I know you said you're not really with it the first few days. When you've had your first couple of surgeries and you're now, you're in hospital, you're in bed, what are you thinking about there? Are you thinking about the rugby at all? Are you thinking about the Olympics? Like, what's going through your mind?
I think Olympics was always kind of on my mind and on the cards, and I think I was so kind of blinded by the severity of the injury, really, like thinking, okay, I'm going to treat this like a normal rugby injury. It's a broken leg. I'm going to be back in 2 months. I'm going to train again. I'm going to go to Tokyo. And then obviously I realized, holy smokes, it's a lot worse. I'm now actually fighting to save my leg just to keep it on me. So yeah, I mean, I guess I got a serious wake up call kind of when I came around a bit. But I mean, I had my family down here, I had lots of friends come and visit me. And I mean, like the positivity was always there. And I guess I learned that through my injuries with rugby and stuff, and I kind of try to treat it as just like a normal rugby injury. Um, But yeah, there was definitely some tough times, but yeah, I mean, we got through it and tried to kind of keep as
How
happy as I could be in that situation.
I can understand your mindset, having done, 3 knee surgeries myself, completely incomparable to what you've gone through, because also mine were inflicted via rugby training or rugby matches. I can't. I mean, when I hear about your story, right, and I hear it's hit and run,
Yeah.
that like makes my blood boil, because I'm just like, oh, that fucker, and it makes me really want to believe in karma. And not that, you had bad karma, so you got hit by a bloody car. It's not at all. It's like, right, something, you're going to have all this good luck and you're making the best of a situation which you are completely out of your control.
Mm.
How has, like, it being a hit and run, has that had any effect on you whatsoever? Like that sense of injustice, have you had any of that?
Not really, to be honest with you. Like, I was kind of talking to my family about it afterwards as well, and I was kind of thinking like, what? Even if we knew who it was, what is it going to achieve? Like, okay, yes, they hit me, and it was kind of in a bit of a bad way, but ultimately, I'm in this situation now, and I can't do anything about it. Like, if I'm going to be angry at this guy, I'm probably going to be angry at him forever and blame him forever. And
Mm.
I didn't really want to go down that path. I had kind of bigger things to focus on, and so I think I just kind of blanked it out, to be honest. And I don't know if in the future it's going to come up again, but at the moment it's kind of there, and I think I've come to terms with it. And I mean, it is what it is, you know. Like, life happened, and that situation, as shitty as it was, happened, and you just gotta move on, stay positive, and like, life has carried on. And I mean, you could literally say, as one door closes, so many have opened for me. Unfortunate to miss Tokyo 2020, but having qualified for that and have been a part of it and was going, I ended up, in Paris 2024 with in the Paralympics, with the tandem cycling. And I've now found this new route of triathlon, um, which I'm loving at the moment, and got my first podium the other week, which is quite fun in Abu Dhabi.
Yay, congrats, man.
Life is no, thank you. Life is changed but moved on, and in quite a cool way. So yeah, and as unfortunate as it was to basically finish my rugby career on that way, like, my sporting journey has taken so many different turns after that. And yeah, I'm really fortunate for the way it's kind of panned out now. So
How long was it after the accident that you realized that you weren't going to actually be able to play rugby again?
it was it was quite soon, to be honest. It was within the that 6 weeks I was in hospital. It was probably about like the third or fourth week in. To be honest, like, the surgeon said to me, he said, "Look, we need to go in for amputation." Got past that, then they said, "Okay, now the next stage is you'll be lucky if you can walk again." I mean, I managed to walk, and then I lost all the tendons through the front of my ankle, and so still to this day I can't lift my toes up. I can push down with them, but I can't open them or lift them up. And then also the muscle that's kind of the tendon at the end of your tibant, which is the one at the front of your shin bone that lifts your foot, I
Hmm.
severed that as well. So they actually then took my hamstring out and attached it to my tibant, and then drilled it into my big toe. So they said, "Look, if you'll be able to fight gravity now, you'll be lucky." I managed to get past that. Managed to kind of
What do you mean?
get
What do you mean fight gravity? What do
I
you
had
mean?
drop foot. So basically, like, if this is your leg, this is your foot, all the tendons through here were done, and so then my foot was just kind of hanging because there was nothing supporting it. So they then reattached. Well, took a tendon graft from my hamstring, take my whole hamstring out, and drilled it into my big toe and into the muscle. And so then I got a bit of control after that. But for 10 months, it took 10 months before they then actually did that surgery. And the doctor that was doing that said, "Look, this is a new one for me, but let's give it a shot. We got nothing to lose." And I said, 100%. I said, "You guys do whatever you need to do just to try and get me through this and back walking." And So yeah, so after that, got through that, managed to fight
So
gravity.
sorry, just so I'm clear, the hamstring attaches onto so your foot's here and your tib's here, and then
I
when
show
you say
you.
fight gravity, you're trying. Yeah, go on.
So this is. Oh, crikey, we'll have to take the screen down a bit. So this is the leg. So this all
Oh
blew
my
open in the
gosh!
crash.
Wow.
And then this tendon you can see here is now my hamstring. So they've taken that out, obviously the
So
back
that's
behind
your
the quad.
hamstring on your shin.
Yeah, bro, it's nuts. And then they took out the second toe tendon because it was too strong for the muscle here. So then they reinforced the hamstring and the tibant muscle with my toe tendon. So now it's my hamstring and my toe tendon that are ultimately lifting my foot. So I've got a little bit of movement.
And you had to train that movement once
Yeah,
it got attached. Once your hamstring got attached, you had to then train that to be able to lift your foot again.
yeah, and the doctor always said to me, keep contracting that tibant muscle so that when we do the surgery, that muscle is still firing. Um, and it's actually where I went through my worst place mentally. Was at that point because they did the surgery, and I was so relieved to have my foot working again. And then it was over kind of the next 3 to 4 days. It slowly started not working, basically. And he said, look, if we do the surgery and it doesn't work, then we've got no other option. So now I was thinking, fuck, well, it's not working. It's failing. And so called him up and he said, look, Oscar, there's nothing to worry about. But it was at that point that I went into a serious kind of mental dip. My girlfriend at the time, Maddie, I don't know how she dealt with me. I'd be on the phone to her the whole time, just crying. It was like a really, really, really tough time because I thought if this doesn't work, I'm done. Like my foot, I'm just going to have drop foot for the rest of my life. But
As in
when
you're done, as in you won't be able to walk again.
well, you can walk, but it's just like your foot's just kind of hanging down. So it's quite hard. Like you can't lift your foot. So it'd be quite hard to run again properly. And anyway, I spoke to my surgeon. He said, look, come in. Let's do an ultrasound. I think basically where we attached the hamstring would have pulled away from the tibant muscle. And he said, look, there's nothing to worry about. I'll open you up again. We'll have a look at it. And then if it's right, I'll take your toe tendon, reinforce it into the muscle and the hamstring so that there's that kind of strength between it. Because I think the end of that tibant tendon when it got severed in the crash, was just a bit frail. And so it was a bit weak for such a strong like hamstring tendon to be down there. And so they then, reinforced the tibant with my toe tendon and then into the hamstring with my toe tendon just to give it a bit more support. And then,
Jeez.
here we are, working and running around again.
And what's happened to your hamstring then? Your hamstring that got taken. Does that grow back, or does anything else get put in place?
No. They actually, for a lot of kind of ACLs, as you would know, and knee surgeries and stuff, they take part of your hamstring tendon, but they took out kind of my whole one. And unless I'm doing kind of single leg work, I really feel it during like doing that kind of stuff. But otherwise, when I'm running, everything you have no idea.
It's fine.
I've got a big hole in
Wow.
the back of it. Like if I stretch my hamstring,
Yeah.
But no, it's crazy. Like to be honest with you, like how far I've come from going in for amputation is mad. Like when I've got socks and trainers on and I'm running, you'd have no idea. I think I'm running even faster than I was before.
You'd have no idea, man. Like your videos of you running, it's so good to see. Like because you're never slow, right? You're never slow. So obviously you're going to be a good runner at triathlon and all that sort of stuff. But considering you've had all of this, it's insane that you're doing what you're doing now, and now hearing more of the detailed story is fucking crazy. It's crazy. And and so how long was it between how long was your physical recovery? So let's say being able to run. So from the accident to being able to run, how long was that?
It was probably about a year and a half.
Fuck, that's long. That's long, but that's not too bad.
It's
considering everything you've been through. A year and a half is a long time. Don't get me wrong, but some people tear their Achilles or tear their ACLs or blow out their knees and they're out for longer than that.
Yeah. I think
That
on that point as well, I think like obviously through my rugby and stuff and having come down to South Africa for my physios at the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport where the SA7s are based, the South Africa 7 side. It's such a high performing center with like amazing physios and everything. And having had that connection with them before, I guess when I started my rehab program, I went to them. So I based myself at SAS for a long time. Um, and I guess through my rugby, I was privileged enough to know that I had to take my rehab seriously. And I literally did rehab for a year and a half.
yeah.
And yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy. So, but yeah, fortunate
I
enough
mean,
to have those contacts and go down that route. So,
I mean, good on you, man. Good on you. Like you're so positive, and it's easier to look back on it in a positive light now, considering what you're going through now and what you're working towards now. But there must have been, as you've already touched on, there must have been some real lows in that year and a
yeah,
half, 2 year period.
and I think like I guess everybody does go through a time of struggle, and that time of struggle is really, really grim. But there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what I kept telling myself. And even when I went down into these slumps, I just would think about the positive things in life. Like, look, I've got my leg, I've got a supportive family, I've got supportive friends. Like my life, it's it's crappy for me at the moment, but in comparison to what some people are going through in this world, it's not that bad at all. And obviously, you had to take time to kind of have your down periods and accept it. And I think accepting it is a huge thing. Like, I guess becoming comfortable in a shitty situation is really important, and it builds character. And I think what I ultimately learned having gone through that kind of mental struggle has really helped me now in life. And I guess it sounds quite bad to say, but I like know what I want in life now, and the other kind of things that are relevant to me, I don't really care about. Yeah, I'm actually a nice guy, I promise. No.
Can you? I mean, I completely feel you. Can you give us some examples of things that you thought you cared about before, but now are completely irrelevant to your life?
It's just smaller things, I guess, that would annoy you. Like if I kind of think about like, for example, stubbing my toe and stuff, and then how angry that makes you. This is just like a random example of it, but then I think about it and I'm like, it shouldn't really make you that angry. You know what I mean? And it's like,
But now you're like, I can feel my toe. I can
yeah,
feel
yeah,
my toe.
finally, I'm like,
I
fucking
have a
a bit harder
toe.
next time. But I don't know, like off my head, really like examples. But there's been a lot of times where I'm kind of like, that's irrelevant to me now. Like it means nothing. A lot of, I don't know, it sounds so bad to say this, but a lot of people that have opinions about me as well, who aren't that close to me, I don't really care about.
Oh, I love that, man. Love that.
And like, there's always going to be haters in this world, and a lot of people are going to give you kind of shit for what you're doing in life and stuff. But if you're on your journey and you're happy where you're going, then who really cares what people think of you? You know what I mean? Like, if some of my family turned around and said you're being a dick, or some of my good mates turned around and told me you're being a dick, then it would hit different. But if somebody's commenting on my social media about something or other, I mean, that it's just irrelevant. Like it means nothing to me. You know, like
Yeah. I
yeah,
completely agree with you, man. Like it's sometimes, it's really unfortunate, but it takes for something really shit to happen for you to actually almost get a sense of enlightenment for you to realize what's important in your life. What do you
yeah,
actually care about? Who do
yeah,
you actually care about? Who are you listening to? Who are you surrounding yourself with? And then everything else completely irrelevant. And it's
completely
it's
irrelevant.
something that I've kind of learned in the last 6 months. Actually, it's unfortunately the things that you care about most in the world are often the things completely out of your control. So in terms of stressing and worrying about things, I'm a bit of a control freak a lot of the time, where I like my discipline, my morning routine, gym, running, whatever.
Yeah,
But really, none of that fucking matters. I've got my wife, my family, people that I actually care about. I'm healthy, but then something can change in a heartbeat, right? Like your things, just like you getting hit by a car, like that is completely out of the blue, out of your control. But
Yeah.
sometimes it takes for something like that to happen for you to have that epiphany moment where the rest of your life you're going to go into it with this mindset of, well, not I'm untouchable, but you're so aware of how special things are, and you know what's important to you, you know what you care about, which is money can't buy that.
No, no, not at all. And like, as I said, as when I was talking about so many doors opening, I mean, that's one of them. That's a huge one. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, life is good at the moment. And I, of course, yeah, I went through the hard times and all of that. But I'm now out of it. I'm now living down in beautiful Stellenbosch in the Western Cape in South Africa, just outside of Cape Town. I mean, we're in the winelands. I'm down here. I train triathlon as my profession now. And yeah, I think about life, and I think I'm super super lucky and privileged and grateful to be living this kind of next chapter in my life that's worked out. I guess through a shitty situation as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, your energy is infectious, man, and I'm so happy you've managed to get to where you are now. Hearing your story, how soon after your accident were you thinking about what's next? So you've spoken about being told you can't play rugby within the first 3 to 4 weeks, which was obviously your profession. You're a professional rugby player going to the Olympics. How soon after that were you thinking, okay, what am I doing next? What am I getting my teeth stuck into?
Yeah,
Because
I
you're an
am.
athlete, you're an
Yeah,
athlete. At the end of the day, that's what you've done your whole life.
100%. Like it's kind of your identity. It's everything, and for that to be taken away in an instant is quite something to have to overcome. And I actually on the seventh circuit became very good mates with a guy called James Murphy, and he played for South Africa Sevens. And when he heard about my accident and me having to come down to Cape Town, he said, "Look, my mum lives in Cape Town. You guys come base yourself down here with her." So their family was unbelievable towards us. My mum and Libya are kind of best mates now as well, and mum's kind of got a fabric business out of this whole thing. But James kind of said, "Look, Oscar, we got to get your mind onto something else now." And so we actually set up a flooring business together.
Awesome.
Which was quite random and out of the blue, but it kept me kind of super focused on something. And so I guess for the next, we set it up quite quick. Um, so for the next kind of year and a half, 2 years, I was very much focused on just growing that. I didn't really know where my sporting life was going to go. Um, Moved back home to Kenya, kind of would play touch on a Wednesday up at like kind of we live on like a subsection of a farm, and so there's a lot of farmers and stuff that come around on a Wednesday evening. We have club night down at like the local club, and just play touch and stuff down there, and we play a bit of hockey. And so sport was very very kind of casual again, but it was super super important for me just to kind of get back into it. I then did my first triathlon in October 2023. That I loved it, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. I could potentially kind of talk to Kenya Triathlon, what's in place. And then they said, why don't you go down the para route? And so I started then digging into kind of the whole Paralympic side of sport. Met with the Secretary General of Kenya. He was a really nice guy, took me under his wing. And he then kind of pushed for me to try get to Paris 2024 through triathlon route, but it was all just too late, and I didn't have the points, and it's super competitive. I don't know what I was thinking I could just hopefully try again.
I was going to say, you've just discovered this power route, and now you're like, oh yeah, 2024. I mean, you still made it there, right? You still made it there, but I'm looking forward to hearing that story of how that ended up happening.
That's like a cool running type story. So yeah, that obviously then didn't happen. And then I was kind of I had kind of a few weeks off, and we can go into that part of it now. Kind of had a few weeks off. In fact, let's not jump to that quickly. So I did that in 2023. at first
Hmm.
triathlon, and then I was just back home and I was pursuing this kind of route and stuff. And then in March 2024, I came down to Stellenbosch. So I got introduced to the Stellenbosch Triathlon squad, um, and to the high performance coach. And there's a woman called Vicky van der Merwe who set it up, and she went to Paris 2024 to represent South Africa for triathlon, and it's her kind of little baby that she's been growing for a bit. And now it's got some serious wheels behind it. It's an amazing setup. They've set up a high performance kind of part of it with our coach is called Colin Fleming, who's a Dutch guy, and yeah, there's about 8 of us, and it's super competitive. They're all able-bodied athletes, and so I'm always kind of trying to push myself and try my best to keep up with them. But I mean, they're
So you
machines.
do all your training with able-bodied athletes.
Yeah. So I'm like, my sets are a bit different in terms of like the swims and some of the running stuff. It would be a bit shorter and or a bit slower because of their paces compared to mine. But yeah, we try to keep everything the same. So if it's a track session, for example, I'll just do a slightly different track session to what they're doing. So I came down in March, joined that, and then did a few races, and then went over to the UK in July, August, just for like a bit of time off. I was just doing a few fun races over there during the summer, and then I went up to watch Fulham Man U for the opening game of the Premier League because my mate works for Fulham and I'm a Fulham supporter. So cruised up there, had a bit of a terror, and then got the phone call saying you got to come to Paris.
This is crazy. When I read about this
Honestly,
story, this is just one of the craziest things.
yeah, you couldn't script it. Honestly, when I say it's like Cool Runnings, it was probably like Cool Runnings. So
Go
kind
on.
of I
So
was
explain a bit more. Yeah, go into more detail.
okay. So I initially they asked me to go over to Paris and kind of help them out where I could and kind of be a chauffeur for them. And so the first couple of days when I got to Paris, I was chauffeuring like the squad around. Um, so I got an accreditation that literally said chauffeur on it. And then a few days later, the boys, unfortunately, they had a crash just before heading up to Paris, which is so weird again because they went through a red light and they T-boned a car. So these two chaps, unfortunately, flew over the front of this car on a tandem bike, and they were going quite quick through the lights. So the main guy on the front, the pilot, he went over the bonnet of the car, and Ogata, who's the athlete, didn't manage to get over the car, but kind of wasn't hurt. Whereas the guy who was the pilot, who's the able-bodied chap, had broken his collarbone and fractured his hip as well. And so this poor French girl now obviously gets T-boned by this bicycle, and now there's two chaps on the floor. The one who's an able-bodied screaming at the blind chap to come and help him, and he's obviously saying, "Oh, I don't know what to
Oh,
do. I don't know what the fuck happened." So they're now
oh my
screaming at
god!
each
I
other
shouldn't
in
laugh. I
Swahili.
shouldn't laugh.
Oh, it's crazy. And then, scream at each other in Swahili. And then this poor French woman has to get out. She doesn't know what to do. She starts crying, calls an ambulance and the police, and they basically, simmer down the whole situation. But it was so weird how things kind of worked out for me to then be in Paris at the time. And then they were like, well, you ride triathlon, you ride bike, so you're going to have to take his spot and ride with Ogata.
Oh
So,
my god!
so I went from
See, I
chauffeur of
did
the
not
mini.
know the extent to the full story.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And Kenya, actually, when I was in the UK, when I did a triathlon, they'd asked me to search for some tandem bikes over there. Um, and so I got in touch with this company called Ward Performance and was chatting to them a bit. And then actually the bike that I sourced was the one I ended up racing on in Paris. So it was, I mean, the whole thing is mad. Like it's
Everything just
crazy. It's
worked
crazy,
out,
crazy.
kind of.
Worked out, yeah. So
And
ended up
so
doing.
the I just want to explain the tandem cycle in the Paralympics. The when you're talking about the pilot, that's someone at the front of the bike who is doing all the steering, right? In a tandem bike.
Yeah, exactly. So the pilot is an able-bodied athlete with a visually impaired athlete behind them, and they're doing all the steering, all the gear changing. and you're having to ride at the same tempo. So you're riding as much as the guy on the back is doing as well. So
Okay, so you can't just like have a gun as a pilot and they can absolutely pump their legs. It's got to be the same
yeah,
like
you have to
cadence
be
and
riding
tempo
the
as,
same.
as the
Yeah, exactly. The same cadence has to be, otherwise it just doesn't work. So you can basically only push as hard as the weaker person. So yeah, that kind of levels it up. But I mean, we were off to a bit of a bad start initially because I'd never ridden a tandem bike in my life, and luckily, luckily, I like all of my racing is on TT bikes, so I'm on the handlebars when I'm riding. So I was kind of used to being in that position, but having to be in that position with 80 kilo chap on the back and a seriously long bicycle was quite interesting. So
in the
we got the bicycle
Paralympics.
in the Paralympics on the world's biggest stage to now try and debut how you ride a bicycle.
Oh my god.
It was comical. Honestly, it was comical. So I then couldn't stay in the village because the village was full until the injured athlete got flown home. So I was probably in the village maybe 4 days before we raced. Got to know Ogada very well, which I had to do. Obviously, him being visually impaired meant I had to kind of do everything with him. So we'd go to breakfast together, we'd go to lunch together, we'd go to dinner together. Wherever we walked around the village, he would just have his hand on my shoulder. So yeah, I got to know him super well, and what a nice chap. I mean, and he was just
Is he
so
a good
great.
guy?
Yeah, really nice guy. And he was the oldest in the field. He was at 58 years of age.
Wow.
Um, which is crazy. Yeah. And he just said, look, well, however we do, I don't care. Like, for us just to be able to compete in the Paralympics is huge for me. And because it's very touch and go for him for a long time. So he just said, look, I'm just super grateful. And I said, no, let's have the best time we can whilst we're here. We could only experience it maybe once in our lives. So let's just make the most of it. And we became, really good buddies and did everything together for about a week and a half.
That's awesome. What a crazy story, man. I mean, also kind of like a movie script, how obviously you wouldn't wish this on anyone, but Ogada and his pilot previously, it happened with T-boning a car.
Yeah.
From you being in this whole situation of getting T-boned by a car. And I mean, thank God, I assume that the pilot, Ogada's previous pilot, only broke his collarbone, right? So he's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's okay. I think he's
So,
back racing now, so he's all good.
what a crazy turn of events, man! Like, and you just being a chauffeur at the Paralympics for the Kenyan
Hey,
team.
nuts! Like literally, I was chauffeur of the van, and then became chauffeur for Agada, taking him around the course.
That is insane. That's insane.
Yeah,
And how
and I
was it?
must
How
say,
was that whole experience then, man? Like the Olympic Village when you got there. Again, as Ogada said, it's just about soaking it all up, right, and making sure you had the best time.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I walked in there and I couldn't believe it. Like, what an amazing place it is. Especially, I think like yes, the Olympics is amazing, and I can imagine the Olympic Village with all those Olympians is pretty incredible. Like to see them and be around them, but in a way, the Paralympics was kind of jaw dropping to see how some of those people kind of have adapted their bad situations to turn them good, and how they actually make the most out of the situations they've got. I mean, like some of them are, I guess, like missing both their legs and both their arms, but swimming and cruising around this Olympic village. Honestly, I think it was probably the most inspirational place I've ever been to in my life. Um,
Wow.
and that's the biggest thing I think struck me immediately was like, holy smokes, how some of these athletes are actually kind of moving around the place and living as close to a normal life as possible was incredible to see. And that was super cool. But then just to be a part of the whole village is incredible. Like you don't need to leave that village when you're in there. They've got hairdressers, they've got a food court that's open 24/7, they've got a whole like healthcare facility. So Agada was missing a few teeth as well, and then on the Saturday after we had raced and everything, it was like, can you just drop me off at the dental clinic? And I was like, where the hell is the dental clinic? And he was like, I don't know. So there's like all these little, it's like all these little cars that would drive you around the village. And so we stopped one of them, and I said, look, I need to take my mate to the dentist. Where the hell do I go? And they just said, jump in, we'll take you to the healthcare facility. Anyway, I kind of had forgotten about that. I came back in the evening, and I was talking to a guard, and I was looking at him. I was like, what the hell is different? Because he didn't tell me what he was going to get done. And this guy came back with full set of teeth, and he just could not stop smiling. And I was like, that is super cool. So there was like,
That's hilarious.
yeah, I literally, that village was mind blowing. Like, in terms of everything, if your bike had an issue, you could take it to the mechanics there. They do everything. All the cardboard beds, if you needed to adjust your cardboard beds, they had a whole like showroom how you could go and learn how to make your bed a bit nicer.
Man, this Ogada, he sounds like an absolute crack up. I need to get him on. Need to get him on the podcast with this brand new team.
He's a legend. He's a legend. He's a legend. And he was like, after we did the road race, he had booked him. We didn't do too well in the road race. He's like, Oscar, I need to get more aerodynamic. I'm going to go get my hair cut. Take me to the hairdresser. And then took him in there, and he got a full buzz cut, straight, everything off. And he said, right, now we're gonna do well in the next race. So
what a legend, man. What a legend.
And there was one time I went out actually with my family, and I came back in. I told him about it. Look, I'm cruising out for a few hours, and he said, "No, it's chilled. I'll be fine." Anyway, I come back in. I can't find this guy anywhere in the room, nowhere around like our little block. So I'm calling everybody, saying, "Have you seen Ogada?" Like, I don't know where he is, and he didn't like using like his cane, and so he just kind of memorizes everything. And this guy just got off, cruised for like 3 hours, was just cruising around. I guess people were kind of helping him when he got a bit stuck, but he just went missing for like 3 hours, and I was running around this place trying to find him. And then he was like, yeah, no, I told you don't have to worry about me, I'll be fine.
It's almost like you're his he's your responsibility because you got promoted to be his partner.
Yeah, straight up.
He's like purposely trying to make your job hard, man.
Yeah. But no, it was super cool, and what an experience, and unbelievable to be a part of and be there with all those kind of athletes, and as crazy as it was and as kind of cool runnings as it was. I think that also made it even cooler because it was just like so out of the blue, and it was funny in a way.
It's just thrown on you, right?
Straight, and so you're literally in the deep end, and you just got to survive. So yeah,
I love that.
It was super cool. It was super cool. What a privilege to have been able to do that.
And so now you're in a proper Paralympic preparation phase for LA, and this time we're going for triathlon.
Yeah. So in October, I had to do all of my own kind of classification stuff, and I got classified into PTS5 for triathlon, which is basically the least affected category of triathlon. And so now I'm on my next journey, which would be to hopefully get LA 28 with triathlon, individual though. Yeah, so no Ogada with
How
me.
Does that? No Ogada. He'll be in the crowds, man. He'll be in the crowds, I'm sure.
Yeah. He has to come.
Supporting. How does that classification work then, if you don't mind me asking, for the Paralympics?
So yeah,
like, as in how do you get tested to get put into a category?
Yeah, so I had to go to Portugal. They do kind of a few around the world a year, and it just happened that there was one in Portugal in October, and then it happened on the Thursday. And if you got all clear, then you would race on the weekend. And so I went over there, did kind of like a training camp for the few days before. Then onto the classification, you got to see there's a couple of doctors in there, and they do a heap of tests on you. They'd asked me to do a heap of tests down here in South Africa, kind of like an EMG test on my leg for the nerves. I sent them a Cybex just because it's a very kind of official way of seeing the difference within the legs. So then when I got there, they had seen all of that, but then they do their own personal tests on you. And they basically look at your body. They're like, right, your upper body's 5 out of 5, your left leg's 5 out of 5. Now your right leg, we need to see that. And they do it on a scoring system. And I think the number was 1,242 that you had to be below to fall into PDS5. Obviously, if you fall below that, you then go into PDS4, PDS3, PDS2. And so when I went in, it's quite a long process and quite kind of scary because everything rides on I guess their opinion. And so they did it like a heap of tests, a heap of strength tests, like kind of pulling on your hammy, raising your kind of leg from the knee up. And I got the all clear, and I was kind of asking them though. I said, okay, so I fall into PDS5, but how's it fair that I technically race against somebody who is missing a hand, for example, but below the elbow? And they said, if you're missing a hand but below the elbow, that somehow they've worked it out that it kind of equates to exactly 15% less ability. And so with my leg, I had to prove to them that I have 15% less ability in my right leg. And I said, okay, yes, I understand that. And they said, so ultimately you should beat them in the swim. I mean, they said you should. I haven't yet. I mean, I promise you, it's incredible to see. And so then when I get to the bike and the run,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and then when I get to the bike and the run, they have the advantage because they've got powerful legs. So
over the course of a whole triathlon, it should be you both have 15% less ability across the course of the triathlon.
Of course, yeah, exactly. So, for example, in Portugal, I got out of the water 4th. I got off my bike 4th, and then I lost 2 places on the run. So
got it.
Yeah.
And
so
is there a way of, when you're doing these testings, is there kind of, because it's subjective, can you cheat the tests? And is there incentive for the athletes to score worse so that you can get in a lower category and then perform better in competition?
Not really. The only category you could kind of do that in is PDS5 because there's so much gray around it. The other categories is basically, so PDS4 is if you are like, let's say you're missing a leg, for example, but below the knee, you fall into PDS4. Then depending on your amputation maybe being above the knee, you fall then into PTS3 or PTS2. I'm not fully 100% sure on those ones, but it kind of works like that. But whereas PDS5, there's a lot of kind of gray within that. But the guys that are doing the test, they 100% know if you're not kind of pushing to your max.
Because it's a combination of scans, like actual data, as well as some subjective tests as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, because I was kind of thinking, surely if you don't push as hard, but I mean, they know, they've done it for so long as well that they know if you're not pulling or pushing, I guess. So, but I don't know. I'm sure there's a few people that actually failed their classification and stuff, which was a shame. But
so what does that mean for those athletes? They don't qualify for Paralympics.
Yes. So you could either then, you can kind of protest your case and you can go for another viewing whenever the next one is, and kind of get reevaluated. But if they are then to say no as well, then it's, you're done. You don't fall into that category. But I mean, then you can go down a different sport. Like, for example, let's say there's up to PDS5 and PDS-VI, which is visually impaired in the triathlon. But then your swimming, for example, has a lot of categories. So you could potentially go down the route to go into swimming, for example.
Got it.
Because they've got a lot more categories within that. So there's other sports out there, but triathlon, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, okay, understood. It's crazy when you watch the Paralympics as a spectator who doesn't or didn't know much about it. When you see all these different categories, you're like, okay, what do these actually mean? And it's true that what you described in that case where someone's missing a hand versus someone like yourself that on the surface looks able-bodied, looks absolutely fine. But that's why I want to know more about the behind the scenes details as to, all right, what are people actually looking at here and equating performance to different types of limb loss or whatever, and how that equates across a course of a whole race. It's really interesting, and it's really amazing. Like I can only imagine how inspiring it was to be in that environment for the Paralympics. And that must have been great fuel for you to then be like, okay, yeah, this is, I want to do this for LA. I want to do individuals in a sport that I want to do. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it was super inspirational, and it did kind of make me realize that this is what I want to do for now, and I'm going to kind of go down that route. And I remember actually the first lunch I went to in the Olympic Village, there was a guy who was missing both of his arms, one of his legs, and his other leg was like slightly shorter. But I just remember looking at him, and he was typing away with his toe on his phone, sending a text message with his toe, and he was nailing it like quick. And I was like, holy smokes, like what people can kind of do to overcome their situations is crazy, and how the body can actually adapt and learn to use different parts of it to make it work is honestly, it was mind blowing. And that's why I said I think it's probably the most inspirational place I've ever been. Just to see that was, yeah, that's the start. And I was like, holy smokes, we're in somewhere pretty special now.
That's really cool, man. What's you're saying you're a full-time athlete still, right? As a triathlete.
Yeah.
What's the you don't have to give me numbers, but what's the funding sort of like for Kenyan triathletes?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not asking for numbers. I just want to understand. This is you're able to do this full time. Like,
yeah.
Is it supported from the government? Is it like the Paralympic Association? Like
it should be supported. I actually spoke to Kenya Triathlon the other day before I went to Abu Dhabi, and I said, "Is there any way I can get any kind of funding to help me out to get there?" They said they had submitted their kind of budget proposal to the government. But typical Kenya, and Kenya being Kenya, they had submitted it too late. So the government had done their kind of forecast for 2025. And so they turned around to me and said, we don't have any funding. And I said, well, I don't know. Yeah. I said, well, ultimately, how, what the race schedule is, how can you put in a submission so late that you can miss a chance to get the funding? Like, how do you expect to grow a sport in Kenya or wherever it is in the world if you don't have funding? You can't. Like, fortunately enough for me, I can kind of do it for a little stint now as I try and hunt for sponsors, but ultimately there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to step back from training full time to actually then getting a job properly to earn a bit more money to be able to fund myself to go and do these races. And because it is expensive, like flying around the world these days after COVID is crazy priced. And I guess this is why it goes back to like my social media journey at the moment is having to pump it now just to try and get that following to get to be more appealing to sponsors. Because yeah, I'm not getting any current support from Kenya. But yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have kind of huge support from my family, and they want to see me do well. But I mean, it's hard for, I guess, other triathletes in Kenya who are missing out because of a situation like this.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question because I'm very interested, but I thought that might be the case, and I think it's really important what you're doing with your social media at the moment, because if you haven't already got sponsors, honestly, I think that's probably the only way, or at least the best way, that you're going to be getting sponsors in the future. Because, as I said, it's such an interesting story. It's a scary, unique, inspirational story, and people need to know about it. And the more people that know about it, then you're going to be attracting cool brands to just help you do this thing that you're doing now. And it's a shame that the funding doesn't come centrally, but I worry that it's probably the same story for a lot of other able-bodied athletes as well, as well as also Paralympians, and a lot of these smaller sports that will go naturally underfunded in different countries and different like central bodies. So private sponsors, man, you are doing the right thing.
So if anyone watches this and they fancy sponsoring me, come on.
Hey, you joke, but you never know. And know. I don't know if you've already considered it, mate, but even the longer form content, Like it's something that I've started recently in the last sort of 5-6 months is my YouTube. And Instagram's great. Instagram's really good. And what you're doing at the moment is really fantastic. But if you had time or you were willing to invest the time, I would start documenting your journey in a longer form process.
Yeah, it's on the cards. We
Good.
might be slowly starting to release a little kind of documentary type series.
Awesome.
We'll go through kind of a more in depth, I guess, interview than we've done just now, and it'll go through my life before, my rugby life, my school life, going into kind of then I guess my injury, going through a bit of that, then building up, and hopefully aiming its way towards LA 28. So it's on the cards. So definitely, and it'll be a YouTube based. It'll be shorter snippets on Instagram, but it'll be a YouTube based kind of documentary.
I'm very happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that, because I mean, all of this stuff that you're telling me about during this podcast, like all the behind the scenes stuff, is would be so interesting to watch. I would love to see more of your recovery. I mean, I'm a nose, right? So I would love to see your rehab and like your strength training and your. I would love to see it now. I'd love to see your training. That's the type of content that I watch. Is like people going about their normal day, but doing this triathlon training, what you eat, how you train. All this sort of stuff. I love it. I love it. But I'm happy to hear that you're going to be doing that, because I think it would be that would get sponsors on board as well. That will really attract the right crowd, I think.
Oh, well, shot, my brother. Appreciate it. Let's see where we go to.
Good. Well, you let us know when it comes out or when it's close to coming out, and we'll do our best to promote it as well from our side.
Nice shot. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, mate. Final question, which is what I ask any guest that comes on the podcast. As you know, the podcast is called Abnormal. It's for normal people that want to do abnormal things. As I said at the start, your story is one of the most abnormal that I've ever heard. And if you don't define yourself as abnormal, then I don't know who does define as abnormal. So on that note, if you had one piece of advice for anyone listening, anyone watching who wanted to do something abnormal in their lives, what would it be?
That's a good one. Obviously, if you're going to do something abnormal, you've got to be fully committed to it. So I guess like your biggest thing is commitment. So for example, if somebody thought, right, I want to do an ultra triathlon, for example, there's one here in Cape Town that's happening next weekend called Calling Cape Town. And it's the Robben Island swim, which is 8 kilometers. It's the Argus bike ride. I believe it's called the Cape Town Cycle Tour now, which is a 109-kilometer bike ride, and then a 50-kilometer trail run, which is up Devil's Peak, up Table Mountain, and up Lion's Head. And so something like that that's, kind of extraordinary. I mean, it takes commitment. Like, to do stuff like that is commitment. And I would never say to anybody that they couldn't do it. If somebody puts their mind to something, which I've learned, your mind is such a powerful thing. And if you can put that towards something and have that consistency and commitment, you're going to achieve it. And so, I guess my message to somebody who was kind of trying to do something extraordinary would be just be committed and know that it's going to be super tough, but the rewards that come after it are incredible. And that self kind of gratitude that comes with the reflection is amazing. So I would never say to somebody they can't achieve anything, because what I've seen people achieve and myself achieve has been pretty extraordinary. So
amazing.
Very long answer, but
no, it's fantastic. And I'm glad you got the piece about reflection in there as well, because I think it's important, especially what we spoke about earlier with the gratitude and reflecting on where you've come from and where you are now, and the new sense of life that gives you, let's call it, and seeing what's important to you and what's important to you moving forward. Mate, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time to come on. It's such an insane story. I can't wait for the episode to go live. And I cannot wait to follow your journey from afar and on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I hope you get all the sponsors that you deserve. And I hope you continue doing this for a long, long time.
No, cheers, my man. Well, thank you for having me as well, and it's so good to catch up again. And yeah, we'll be chatting very soon, hopefully. And yeah, so let's see where this kind of journey and story goes and what comes of it.
Good man. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.